Some caves aren't just deep, they're final. Beneath calm waters and quiet hills, there are tunnels carved by time. Narrow, pitch black, and unforgiving. For most people, they're just a curiosity. But for some, they're an obsession, a challenge, a place to push past fear, into places few dare to go. And sometimes they don't come back. In this video, we're telling the stories of 3 divers who entered these dark places with a plan and never resurfaced. Not because they panicked, not because they were careless, but because the cave took them. They were smart, they were skilled. But in cave diving, that's not always enough, because when the line disappears, you either find your way out or you stay there forever. Roberta Swissgood, trapped alone in Tyuna Cave. In the world of cave diving, Roberta Swissgood didn't need to be loud to be respected. She wasn't a thrill seeker, and she wasn't looking for fame. She was quiet, focused, and brave. One of the few women diving solo into deep, dangerous caves in the late 1980s. Roberta was from Pennsylvania. By 1988, she was already experienced in both open water and caves. People who knew her said she took things seriously. She double-checked her gear, she planned her dives carefully, and when she went into a cave, she wasn't there to show off. She was there to learn, to map, and to go just a little farther than last time. She had a fascination with Tyuna Cave, a muddy, winding system near Altoona, Pennsylvania. It wasn't very popular, it didn't have big chambers or clear water, but it was deep, narrow, and mostly unexplored. For someone like Roberta, that made it the perfect challenge. She wanted to map parts of the cave that no one had touched, to leave something behind, not her name, but her line, a mark on a world most people never see. "We don't conquer caves," she once wrote. "We borrow time inside them." That's how she saw it. Diving was about respect. You bring the right gear, you follow the line, you don't panic. But even when you do everything right, caves don't always give you a second chance. On June 18, 1988, Roberta went in alone. It wasn't unusual for her. That was how she preferred to dive. No distractions, no noise. Just the cave, the light, and her breath. She had a guideline. She had her tanks. She was ready. But she never made it back. And the reason why wasn't anything dramatic. It was one mistake, one moment. One small shift in the water that would lead to everything going wrong. The cave, Tyuna's deceptive simplicity. From the outside, Tyuna Cave looks like nothing special. A small hole in the ground, a puddle at best. No signs, no warnings. You'd never guess it leads to one of the most difficult and dangerous cave systems in the area. But once you go in, the tunnel drops fast. The walls close in. It's muddy, cold, and pitch black. The deeper you go, the tighter it gets. And it doesn't take long before you're underwater completely. Tyuna has 2 main underwater sections, or sumps. The first one is short, it's a kind of warm-up. But the second, that's the one divers fear. It stretches over 1,000 feet with parts that are barely wide enough to squeeze through. Visibility is usually bad. The silt, soft mud covering the floor and walls, gets kicked up with just one wrong fin movement. And when that happens, it's like diving into a blackout. That's what makes Tyuna dangerous. It's not just the depth or the cold, it's how quickly it can erase everything around you. 1 second you're following a line, the next you can't see your own hand. For Roberta, this cave had been a puzzle she wanted to solve. She had gone through it before. She knew the layout, at least what was mapped. But she also knew that past a certain point, there were no maps, just darkness and risk. That day, she planned to go deeper into the second sump than she ever had before. Maybe find a new turn. Maybe drop a survey marker. She was careful. She wasn't rushing. But even caves, you know, can turn against you. That's what Tyuna did. The fatal dive. On the morning of the dive, Roberta entered the water like she always did. Quiet, steady, and prepared. She brought her gear, her line, and her logbook. She passed through the first sump easily and began her descent into the second. Deeper, darker, and much more dangerous. She had done this part before, but this time she wanted to go further. What happened next isn't completely clear. No one was with her. There was no camera, no final message. But the divers who went in after her figured out the likely story based on her position and gear. At some point deep in the second sump, Roberta lost the guideline. That thin rope was her only way back. It doesn't take much, a sharp turn, a slip of the hand, or a cloud of silt stirred up from the floor. Once the water goes black, your light is useless. You don't know what's up or down, you're just floating in ink. She tried to find the line again, but it was already too late. Her breathing would have gotten faster. Her air tank would have drained quicker. And in the silence of that cave, her chances were slipping away with every second. When rescuers found her 4 days later, she was lying still near a dead end in the cave, completely out of air. Her body was intact, her gear was working. She hadn't panicked or thrashed. She had just run out of time. She didn't do anything wrong, one diver said. She just got unlucky in the wrong cave, on the wrong day. Roberta wasn't reckless. She didn't dive without planning. But in a cave like Tyuna, even a perfect plan can fall apart. And when that happens, there's no second chance. Only silence. The aftermath. It took 4 days to find her. When Roberta didn't surface, her friends and family called for help. The cave diving community responded fast. Rescuers from the NSSCDS, one of the top cave diving organizations, suited up and went in. These weren't casual divers. These were experts, trained to recover bodies from the deepest and most dangerous places on Earth. Even for them, it wasn't easy. The water was murky. The silt hadn't settled. Visibility was almost zero in the deeper parts, but they followed the line, checking every side passage, every turn. They knew what they were looking for, but they didn't want to find it, and then they did. Roberta's body was found deep in the second sump, curled near a dead-end wall. Her tank was empty. Her lights were off. Her face was calm. She had been gone for days. There was no sign of panic. Her equipment was in place. The rescue divers said it looked like she had accepted it, that once she realized she couldn't find the line, she stopped fighting and conserved what little air she had left. You could tell she didn't lose control, one diver later said. She just lost the exit. Her dive log was still intact. Inside it, she'd written notes from earlier dives, plans, directions, sketches of the cave. It showed that she had intended to go beyond the known maps that day, maybe just a few feet deeper. That small step into the unknown was all it took. After her recovery, local authorities made a decision. No more casual diving in Tyuna. The cave was closed to the public. Only those with written permission could enter, and only under strict conditions. Her death sent a quiet wave through the community. It didn't make national headlines. There were no big news stories. But cave divers across the country heard about it, and they understood. This was not a case of someone being careless. Roberta did everything by the book, except one thing. She went alone. Warning signs. Today, Roberta's story isn't told in documentaries or viral videos. You won't find her in clickbait titles or mainstream disaster lists. But if you ask cave divers, or especially the old school ones, they know, they remember. Because Roberta's dive had all the markings of a routine trip. It was planned, she was experienced, she had a line, and still, she died. That's what makes it so haunting. It wasn't an explosion, it wasn't a panic. It was a quiet failure that cost everything. Her death became a case study, not in public safety manuals, but in quiet conversations, in diver briefings, and in those warnings passed from instructor to student. Never dive alone, no matter how many times you've done it. Roberta's story added weight to something already known but often ignored. Redundancy isn't optional in cave diving. You don't just bring an extra light, you bring a person. Someone who can grab you if you go blind. Someone who can see what you can't. Because the cave doesn't care if you're careful. The cave doesn't give warnings. And when things go wrong in a place like Tyuna, they go wrong forever. Today, Tyuna is part of a protected preserve. People can visit it. They can look down into the water where it all began. But few are allowed to dive there. And even fewer go deep. Some of those who knew Roberta say the cave changed after her. That it feels colder now, quieter, like it remembers. Maybe that's just a story. But one thing's certain. Roberta Swissgood went a little deeper than anyone had before her. And she never came back. Patrice Cabanell, lost in Saint Georges Cave, 2024. Patrice Cabanell wasn't famous, but he was quickly becoming a name people in the cave diving world respected. He was only 32, based in France, quiet, serious. The kind of diver who didn't post videos or brag about dives. He just went deeper, further, and did it right. Patrice wasn't interested in the spotlight. He was chasing exploration. For him, diving wasn't about thrills. It was about pushing into places where the map still said unknown. He had made a name for himself exploring parts of the Timavo system in northern Italy. one of Europe's most complicated underwater cave networks. He worked with scientists, mapped new tunnels, and brought a sense of calm professionalism to a sport filled with danger. But Patrice also had a tendency to go into places few dared enter. He trained hard, planned everything, and knew his gear inside and out. People who dove with him said he was confident, almost surgical in how he moved. He didn't waste air, he didn't waste time, he respected the cave. A fellow diver said, by 2024 he was part of a tight-knit group exploring a lesser-known system in southern France. Saint-Georges Cave, a cold, submerged labyrinth under Mont Valon. It was supposed to be just another dive, just another day exploring the dark. But that day, something happened, and Patrice Cabanell never made it back. The dive into Saint-Georges. Saint-Georges Cave isn't flashy. It doesn't show up in travel blogs or Instagram shots. It's tucked deep into the countryside, not far from the Dordogne River. But underneath, it holds a complex system of submerged tunnels. Cold, narrow, and extremely dangerous. The water is clear but cold. The cave stretches for hundreds of meters underwater. Some passages are wide, but others are just barely large enough for a diver to squeeze through. Patrice and his team had been there before. This was part of a multi-day expedition, with gear stashed in advance, backup tanks, and carefully planned dive profiles. The goal was to go deeper into the cave's unexplored southern route, one that twisted sharply and hadn't yet been fully mapped. He entered the water as planned. Conditions were normal. His rebreather was functioning. Visibility was decent. He was familiar with the route. But something along the dive path went wrong. Patrice didn't return. His teammates waited, then tried to follow his route. But the cave's complexity slowed them down. It took a full-scale recovery operation involving top French cave divers to eventually locate him. They found his body in a narrow passage just past a known restriction. His gear was intact. There were no signs of panic, but he was out of time and out of air. The rescue was slow, careful, and dangerous. Even for experienced divers, that part of the cave is incredibly difficult to reach. Patrice had made it further than most, but that final stretch took everything. Something went wrong. The details are still blurry. French authorities didn't release much. No big press release. No dramatic footage. Just silence. The few things we do know come from the dive logs and quiet statements from people involved. What they believe is that Patrice got caught near a tight turn, where the cave narrows unexpectedly. The dive computer showed an unusual stop, too long in a spot no one usually lingers in. Some think he got slightly tangled. Others think a flow current pinned him for just a minute too long. But in a cave like Saint-Georges, 1 minute is everything. His oxygen mix was correct. His rebreather was functioning. He wasn't a rookie. But caves don't care how careful you are. They don't care how good your training is. Once you're deep enough, there's no margin, no grace, no almost. There's either survival or silence. It was supposed to be a short push, one diver said. But in those caves, short can turn into forever. After Patrice was found, there was no blame thrown around. No loud outrage. Just quiet grief. The diving world lost someone skilled, someone focused, someone with more left to give. And his death didn't go viral. It didn't trend, but it echoed. Because if someone like Patrice could be lost down there, anyone could. Sparse but haunting details. After Patrice's body was brought back to the surface, the questions started, but the answers didn't. There was no official press conference, no documentary, no long interviews, just a few quiet statements confirming what everyone already knew. He was gone. The French diving authorities released very little, just enough to confirm the location and the recovery. That was it. And yet, the silence said a lot. People close to the dive began piecing things together. His computer log showed that he had spent more time than expected near one of the known restriction points. A tight, sloping section where the current pulls slightly to the right. It wasn't especially deadly, if you moved fast. But if your gear shifted, if your fin clipped the ceiling, if you lost 10 seconds, that's enough. Some believe Patrice may have gotten hung up just slightly. Not a full entrapment. Maybe a snag. Maybe a misstep. Maybe his body twisted the wrong way and the rebreather frame caught a ledge. Just long enough to force a pause. Just long enough for a chill to creep in and his air clock to start ticking faster. What made it worse was that he was close. He wasn't at the furthest point. He was near the planned turnaround area. Close to the stored bailout tanks. Close to help, just not close enough. When the recovery divers found him, he looked calm. His hands weren't flailing, his face wasn't twisted. There was no chaos, he just Stopped moving, out of time, out of air. He didn't panic, one diver said quietly. He accepted it. That's what hurts. In the small diving community in France, people spoke of him with deep respect. They didn't gossip. They didn't sensationalize it. They just felt the weight of what was lost. He wasn't reckless. He didn't push limits for glory. But he was in a place where the cave doesn't care how careful you are. A caution lost in translation. Outside of a few diving forums and local news reports, Patrice's story barely made a ripple. No headlines, no viral videos, no debates. Just another name in a growing list of those who went too deep and never came back. And yet, for those who understood what he was doing, his death was anything but small. Saint-Georges Cave is not famous. It doesn't attract tourists or film crews. But it's one of those systems that eats away at divers quietly, slow, cold, and tight. It requires absolute focus, no drift, no distraction. Patrice knew this. He had respected the cave, and still, he was lost inside it. That's the part that sticks with the people who knew him. He didn't break rules, he didn't take shortcuts, but the cave doesn't always punish recklessness. Sometimes, it just punishes presence. There's no room for error down there, said one of his fellow team members. And sometimes, even if there is no error, it's still not enough. Today, most people have never heard of him. But in dive briefings across Europe, instructors now use his name. They don't dramatize it. They just say, Saint-Georges took Patrice. Stay sharp. His death is a whisper, not a scream. But sometimes whispers travel further. Because the scariest part of Patrice Cabanell's story is how quiet it all was. No explosion, no warning. Just one last breath in a cave that offered no second chance. Ben McDaniel vanished in Vortex Spring, 2010. Ben McDaniel wasn't a professional diver. He wasn't certified for cave diving, but he was obsessed with it and determined to go deeper than he was supposed to. In the summer of 2010, Ben was 30 years old and trying to rebuild his life. He'd been through a lot: a failed marriage, a struggling business, and the death of his younger brother. He moved into his parents' beach house in Florida to get a fresh start. That's when he found Vortex Spring. It was a popular place for divers. The water was warm, clear, and full of life. People came to train there, swim, or just cool off. But beneath the surface, there was something far more dangerous. A cave system sealed off behind a locked gate. That gate had a sign bolted to it with a clear warning: "Stop! Prevent your death. Do not go beyond this point." Ben saw that sign, and he went past it anyway. He wasn't certified to enter that part of the cave, but he had somehow gotten access to a key, either from a staff member, a friend, or possibly just someone who didn't realize how serious the danger was. Ben had been diving that cave almost daily. Other divers saw him down there often. He even staged tanks at different depths, something serious divers do when planning a long, deep dive. But the difference was, he wasn't trained for that kind of environment. Still, he kept going. And on August 18, 2010, he suited up for another solo dive. He was seen walking to the cave entrance around 7:30 p.m. He waved to another diver, descended, and passed through the gate. He never came back. The day he disappeared. Ben's truck was still parked outside the next morning. His wallet, phone, and keys were inside. At first, no one panicked. It wasn't unusual for divers to surface late or even stay overnight. But by midday, people realized something was wrong. Search and rescue teams arrived fast, and this wasn't just any recovery mission. It involved some of the most skilled cave divers in the world. What made it strange from the start was that Ben's gear, his tanks, his guideline, even his lights, should have made it easier to locate him. But they didn't. Divers scoured the cave for days, crawling through every tight passage, every blind turn. They found nothing. No body, no broken gear, no sign of distress. It was like he had vanished. Some divers believed he might have gotten stuck in a silted tunnel no one had discovered yet. Others thought maybe he had panicked and dropped deeper into a section with no return. But the strangest theory came from people outside the dive community. They wondered, did he fake it? People don't just disappear like that, one investigator said, not without leaving something behind. And yet, nothing was there. It didn't feel like a normal dive fatality. It felt like a ghost story, unfolding in real time. A search that found nothing. In most cave diving accidents, the ending is brutal but clear. A diver gets trapped, runs out of air, and is later found by rescue teams. But with Ben, there was no ending. Veteran divers searched for weeks. They went deeper than anyone wanted to. Some even risked their own lives trying to find him. At one point, a diver got stuck while looking and barely made it back out. But still, no Ben. The team used lines, lights, cameras. They followed every known tunnel, squeezed through every restriction. Nothing. Eventually, the official search was called off. But people kept diving the cave, hoping he'd turn up. They checked spots that hadn't been mapped. Still nothing. Some started wondering if he had staged his own death. Maybe he wanted to disappear and use the cave as the perfect cover. Others thought he might have exited through an unknown tunnel, one that led somewhere else entirely. Then came the theories. Maybe someone murdered him and dumped the body. Maybe he got lost and panicked, wedging himself somewhere no diver could reach. But no matter the theory, one thing never changed. Ben McDaniel was never found. "We've pulled people out of places tighter than this," one diver said. "If he was in there, we would have found him." The mystery only grew when Ben's parents offered a $10,000 reward for information. Some divers were angry. They thought the reward might push someone to risk their life for money in one of the most dangerous caves in the country. To this day, no one has collected that reward. No gear floated to the surface. No dive computer, no body. Just a warning sign on a gate that says, "Do not go beyond this point." And a man who did. A cave that keeps its secrets. Vortex Spring is peaceful on the surface. Clear blue water. Warm year-round. It's a training spot, a tourist stop. A place where scuba students take their first breath underwater. But beneath that calm, Vortex hides a maze. Past the warning sign and the locked gate, the cave drops off fast. It turns narrow, unpredictable, and deadly. Some tunnels twist down like spiral staircases, others choke off suddenly. Visibility can go from perfect to pitch black in seconds. Just one wrong kick, and the silt clouds up like smoke. That's where Ben went, beyond the sign, beyond the gate, into a part of the cave that's claimed lives before. And the strangest part of it all? Ben had been warned. Staff at the dive site had told him not to go past the sign. Other divers mentioned seeing him near the gate regularly, staring at it, sometimes diving close, always alone. One diver said he saw Ben take notes on a slate, planning what looked like a deep push into the system. He was staging tanks too, a method used by experienced divers to leave air supplies at various points during long penetrations. But Ben wasn't certified to do cave dives, not officially. It's believed he used a borrowed or unauthorized key to access the gate. He had confidence, but not the training. And once he passed that sign, all the warnings in the world couldn't help him. What makes this case different from other cave fatalities is how little the cave gave back. Usually, caves leave behind something: a body, a fin, a burst of bubbles, a trail. This one gave back nothing. No gear floated up, no alarms were triggered, not even a broken light. It's like the cave swallowed him whole, one diver said, and decided to keep him. Some believe Ben may have slipped into an undocumented tunnel, one no one's ever mapped. Others think he got stuck in a collapse or behind a restriction that's just too tight to reach. But no one can prove anything, because the cave doesn't explain itself. The mystery lives on. 15 years later, the case still haunts people. There are those who believe Ben is still in that cave, somewhere far beyond where any diver has dared to go. There are those who believe he escaped somehow, that he faked his death and started over somewhere new. But the truth is, no one knows, and maybe no one ever will. His family didn't give up. They pushed for more searches. They spoke to the media. They posted his story online, hoping someone would come forward. They even offered a $30,000 reward, but no credible leads ever came in. Vortex Spring shut down cave access for a while after the incident. The warnings were repainted. The gate was reinforced. But that didn't stop the story from spreading, especially in diving circles. For cave divers, Ben's name is like a ghost. His story comes up during safety briefings, in training sessions, on forums, in whispered conversations. He was confident, but he wasn't ready, one instructor said. And he didn't respect the cave. That's why he never came back. The gate is still there. So is the warning sign, but some divers say they feel something extra in the water near the entrance. A strange pressure. A stillness like the cave remembers. Some even leave a hand on the gate before diving, as if to acknowledge it. As if to say, "I know what you've taken." Ben McDaniel went past the point of no return. He crossed into the dark, and whatever happened next, stayed there. Because some caves keep their secrets, and some names, like Ben's, stay echoing in the silence forever. If you found this story gripping, there's more where that came from. We dive into the darkest places people go, and what happens when they don't come back. Hit subscribe if you want more real-life stories like this, told simply, clearly, and without fluff. We keep it honest, we keep it human. And if you've ever looked into the blackness of a cave and felt that chill down your spine, you're not alone. Thanks for watching. Stay curious and stay safe.